Well, hello there and welcome to our channel. And if you've seen any of our previous videos, you may notice that I've now changed my hat to this rather fetching altar number. And if you haven't seen any of our videos before, then why not consider subscribing? And if you click onto that notification bell, YouTube will inform you every time we publish a new video. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about cacti and succulents. And you may be one of those people who are thinking, oh, it's not fair. Why can't I live in a place where I can grow cacti and succulents all year round in my garden? No one really talks like that. But the thing is, yes, you can. So we are going to be discussing five excellent cacti and succulent specimens that you can grow outside all year round in your UK miserable weather garden. So my first choice for cold hardy cacti and succulents for the garden is this absolutely wonderful choice here. It is the Agave Americana, and it is probably one of the hardest and most impressive looking cacti that you can grow, and it will grow in most of the UK given the right conditions, and it's, which is bizarre considering it's a native to like South and Central America, like Texas and Mexico. It really wants to grow, and it really will tolerate some terrible conditions. Let's take a closer look. So this is just a small specimen that we recently put in, but given time and given the right conditions, this will grow up to a really fantastic 2 meters tall. A truly impressive architectural specimen. All you need to do is make sure that it's planted in full sun for as much of the day as you can possibly do, and make sure also that it's well drained in the soil. Now, if you saw our previous video, we planted this up, we dug a lovely big hole, backfilled it with a load of gravel at the bottom, and when we refilled it with the soil and a little bit of compost, we added a little bit of grit, a little bit of horticultural sand for that drainage. So long as it's got the drainage and it's got the full sun, then this will be absolutely fine. However, and this is something that I'm going to repeat probably every time I pull up a plant today, it's not just about a plant surviving, it's not about it being cold hardy and getting through the winter and growing again in the spring. It's about keeping it in good quality, because although these plants are tough and will survive, you want them to look good at the end of the year. So even though many people will leave the Agave Americana outside unprotected over the winter, in this garden and wherever I'm working, they will always be protected with a little rain cover to keep the cold off, to get the frost off, because you can get frost damage breaking into the cells on the leaf surfaces. So I know I'm going to be telling you again. Anyway, let's go to plant number 2. Now, this little lovely here is the Aloystriatula, the commonly known as the hardy aloe, although it has had its species name changed to something that is unpronounceable, which I'll put up for you. But this, I mean, it doesn't look much right now, but that is only because this is a cut-in that I took last year and planted it out this spring, so it hasn't started forming. But it will look very impressive, and it does have absolutely lovely flowers that sort of erect. They're almost like Nyphophia, red hot poker flowers on the top there. So a really good specimen, and can grow up to about 2 meters, which is the same as the Agave Americana. And also, this is so tough. Now, this will go down to about, once established, this will go down to about -10 degrees, which by comparison, the Agave over there, they'll go down to about -7 degrees. And this really, you don't need to actually put any protection on this at all. Now, you might want to in its first year, but so it gets established again, free drain soil, full sun. Absolutely wonderful, and it's commonly known as the hardy aloe. Now, there are a couple of other hardy aloes that you can consider, which I'll put up on the screen for you, but this is really good. I really wouldn't, unless it gets really cold, like -3, -4, I wouldn't put any protection on this. If it gets cold on that, then I will, but once it's established, I'll probably just leave that out. But there you go, Aloystriatula. Absolutely wonderful specimen, a really good choice for a succulent in an English garden. So for my third choice, I'm going a little bit off-road. I'm going to be choosing the Engelmans prickly pear, and it's very similar in regards to the agave, insofar that it grows through approximately 2 meters. It requires full sun. It requires a free draining soil. It comes from Central South America of Texas and Mexico. So if you can grow your agave, then you can definitely grow Engelmans prickly pear. But the benefit of this particular variety is that, despite its cold hardiness, which everyone is happy that it will go down to about -8, although there is anecdotal evidence of -30. -30? You're having a laugh, mate. But it will tolerate colder, wetter conditions in the UK. Now, I'm not saying you should keep it in wet conditions, because you know, putting these plants in, taking the time to grow them on, you're adding a little bit more risk, and I'm very risk averse. So the same as I would do with the agave, I would put on a winter tent canopy. It doesn't need to be completely smothered. You still want that airflow underneath, but you want to keep the wet off it and the wet off the ground around it, and you don't water on it. That can have, where you can get some freeze points that will damage the plants. Again, they will be hardy enough to survive, but what is the condition they're going to be in come the other side of the winter? You want them looking as good as you can. So I would always recommend a canopy. So Engelmans opuntia, a really good choice. I rarely, if ever, seen it actually growing outside, and when they do, they tend to just be left. So I would definitely consider it. I'm certainly going to get one and grow one. I'm growing a different one this year, but we'll talk about that in another video. But as far as cold, hardy cacti grow that will tolerate wet conditions, you've got to consider that one. It is wonderful. Now, if you are looking for a succulent ground cover with amazing flowers on it, then you can do no better than look at the Brusus Udist, which is another South African plant. I've got one just down here, but it is a newly planted plant from a cutting that we took last year. Commonly known as an ice plant, or even better, the Hottentot fig, which is an amazing name. It is, again, surprisingly hardy, goes down easily to -5, and it has, like I say, has these wonderful yellow flowers, although this hasn't flowered this year because we really haven't had the heat in the day, and we haven't had the sun. This will grow to a good, it is a bit of a thug, if I'll be honest with you. This will grow 2.5 meters, 5 meters, but I've seen this growing in Hastings on a bank here, and it was probably about, goodness me, 20-30 feet long, but it was established. So really tough in this country. You don't see it really for sale in the garden centres, but believe me, it is tough. It is, I mean, the flowers, if it flowers, I don't know if this one ever will, but now it's established, I reckon a mild winter and a hot summer, this will be brilliant, and I'd love to show you when it does come into flower. There is a problem with the Brusus Udist, and that is because it is listed under Section 9 of the UK Wildlife and Countryside Act as an invasive species. So although it's not banned for sale, you can plant it in your garden, it is an offence to allow it to grow into the outer community, into the countryside. You can't do it, so be very careful. But I think as plants go, as a hardy succulent, you've got to consider it, because there's very few of them around, and it does a fantastic job as a ground cover. And like I say, those flowers, when it flowers, are superb. Now this one is one of my favourite of all the cacti. This is the Parryi cactus, Agave Parryi, commonly known as Parryi's agave, or what I prefer is the artichoke agave. It's just so architectural. You got these wonderful, it's just the beefiness of it, and look at all the like the indents of the old leaves coming through. Really wonderful, but very cold hardy. We keep this in the greenhouse every year. Last year's temperatures were absolutely awful, went down to about -7, -8 inside the greenhouse. But despite the cold is fine. It's not really the cold I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is water freezing on it. So long as it's in the dry and in a well-drained soil, which it is in its pot because I've put that in there, then it is superb. But it's too, to be honest with you, for me, it is too pretty. It's too pretty for me to risk putting outside and getting some damage on it. Yes, it will survive. Yes, it will grow the following year. But will it be attractive? It just looks too pretty. I will not risk it. So that stays in the greenhouse. So yes, it gets the cold, but I don't put it anywhere near the wet over the winter. And the same goes for these other three. Look, see this one here. Look at that one. Let's get a closer look. You're probably really familiar with this. This is the old man cactus, the Cephaloceras senilis. That's very nice. Again, these it's just too pretty. It's too pretty to risk leaving outside and getting wet. It's got to have rock solid drainage on there, and you don't really want any water on it. Now, they do say, some people say you can't have it frozen, some people say it'll go down to about -2, -3 and be absolutely fine because it's protected by all these hairs. But Cephaloceras, it's too pretty. I'm not risking it. It's going to stay in the pot. It will go in a greenhouse. It'll be fine in there, but too pretty. And this one over here is the Orbia from, again, an African plant. And just want to show you, because you don't see it very often, the old flower. I think it's called the starfish flower, but that's wonderful. You can't really grow it as a house plant. Well, you can if you want to. The problem is these flowers, they absolutely stink. But like the others, cold doesn't really bother it at all. Once again, I had this in the greenhouse. It went down to -8 degrees. It didn't look any different. I did have some other Orbias and Stapelias, which is very similar sort of a genus in the greenhouse, and we did lose a few. Although you'll be interested to know that we had a, I think a Stapelia grandiflora. Now that did suffer. It didn't die. A lot of the we only grew it up from cuttings last year. So we went into so I rooted them, planted them in the ground in the greenhouse, and left it there over the winter. I put a bit of protection on the top of it, but it still got partially frozen. But despite that, it has put new growth through. Let me show you. I'll go to the greenhouse, I'll show you it. Now, we have been bringing some plants in because we have been getting some cold nights. But do you see that down there? Do you see that down there? Stapelia grandiflora. It is alive. It has put out new shoots, and it was planted in the greenhouse over the awful winter last year. So yes, Stapelia, they're great, but some of them, I mean, if you could get this to grow outside, that'd be wonderful. But they're not quite hardy enough, although this Parryi will take the cold as though it wasn't even there. But again, with those flowers, it is too pretty for me to risk keeping it outside. I know it's got good drainage in there, but I just don't want to leave it. But maybe I could have been. It's so easy to take from cuttings. I could just chuck a bit out, see if it survives. Why not? Okay, look, I can see I've just gone off track a bit. Anyway, so where were we? We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5. Right, okay, number 5. You're going to like this one, and you don't see it very often. It's quite unusual. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it for sale, but I have seen it in collections. And that is the red, what's it called? Red Orchid Cactus. Now, the botanical name is the Cactus Ackermanii, although there is confusion with that because the what is generally known as the Cactus Ackermanii isn't indeed the Cactus Ackermanii. It is actually the Jenkinsonii, because there's been some confusion. The genuine Ackermanii is not hardy. It's from the forests of Mexico, so it's kind of a tropical epiphytic plant. Grows on trees, but also will grow in the ground. But it's an absolute beauty. But the problem was it got confused with a hybrid, and this hybrid is slightly different in the flower. But because this confusion has been going on for about 200 years, the kind of name Ackermanii has sort of stuck for the Jenkinsonii, and that's a little bit confusing. You can always look it up yourself, try and make it clear to yourself. So what we're calling Ackermanii is in fact Jenkinsonii. But we're going to keep calling it Ackermanii because we have done so for almost 2 centuries. Now, the thing with this is that it's a hybrid, and because it has a hybrid, it expresses some of that hybrid vigor in hardiness. So you can grow it outside in the UK, and as I have done for many years, and I've been growing this thing for about 10 years or so, maybe even a wee bit longer, and I don't think I think I bought it in once. Bought it in last year. All other years, all I've done is leave it outside in its pot, because I was it in the pot. I've never put it in the ground and left it in the ground. I've always had it in the pot left outside, or as a hang basket in the tree. But it's an absolutely superb plant. It's not much to see for most of the year, but when it comes into flower, that flower is absolutely amazing. Let me show you what that flower looked like this year. So this has been in its pot, or this hanging basket plant all year. It's put on quite a lot of growth. We've taken some cuttings off it as well, because you can never be too sure. You could have an absolutely shocking winter and you'll lose it. No, this hasn't happened yet. In fact, this will stay outside and it'll be okay. -3, -4. I mean, who'd have thought it? -3, -4. Absolutely wonderful. So as with all the other hardy cacti, I'm going to take it out of the tree, put it somewhere where it's fairly dry. It will tolerate the wet though, it generally does. I found it to be so tough. But what I do this year, I'll probably bring it to the house and put it under the eaves so it has a bit of a rain shelter. But really that's all. And I'll only bring it in if temperatures do start to look as though they're going to get a bit lower than -4. But other than that, it's rock solid, and I really would recommend it. It's superb. So there you have it, my top 5 cacti and succulents that you can grow outside all year round, and then another few on top of that, as if you needed any more, which you, if you're feeling brave enough, could leave outside, so it's kept in the dry. I say the cold with all of these doesn't come into it, you know, apart from that Cephaloceras, you know, it only goes to like -3, but the rest of them minus, you know, all round about, hovering around about -7 to -10, so really good. So but you know, it takes a bit of confidence, it takes a bit of experience, it takes full sun and a lot of drainage. And if you've got any thoughts that you might be at risk, put a rain cover on it. You know, it's, you know, if you want something good, then sometimes you've got to put a little bit of work in. Anyway, we are at the end of the video, and if you've got any criticisms, which I'm sure some of you do, and you can put those in. If you've got any other choices of some great outdoor cold hardy wet weather cacti, then add those in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Anyway, thanks for watching, nice to see you, and hopefully see you again in the next video.